Charlie Sigler is a tremendous guitarist with roots in the Baltimore and DC jazz scene. Charlie's a graduate from William Patterson University. He's had the chance to perform with some tremendous musicians such as Winard Harper and Slide Hampton. You can catch him at many of the top jazz festivals and clubs, and he keeps busy with performing, recording, and teaching. Charlie's dedication and talent make him one to watch out for, and we're excited to hear his story and hear his approach to jazz guitar. So, Charlie, good to see you.
Good to see you, Abe.
Yeah. So Charlie, the first thing I wanted to, ask you, because you've had a chance to perform with so many great people over the years, and, jazz is filled with so many larger than life masters from, the 60s and everything. If you could spend an hour with any jazz legend, who would it be? What would you want to ask them? Kind of curious about that.
I would probably spend time with Charlie Parker. I would say I think there's still the most mystery around his like personality or his persona. I know him to be like extremely intelligent, and everybody said that he was very wise, but I know it's also really funny. And he probably had the most influence on me as a musician as far as like how I conceptualize playing music and what I'm striving for. So I think just to be around that kind of energy or that charisma would probably be who I would say.
Any guitar players that come to mind also, or just
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, Wes Montgomery was probably my biggest influence on my style and my concept. And I think what I got from learning about Wes and his life is that he was a very like down to earth and humble person. And I think you can really hear that coming out in his playing, how like centered he was and relaxed, had a good time, but still very exploratory and kind of adventurous in certain aspects of his playing. And yeah, I would just, it seems like he would be a great hang, just a good person, like really easy to get along with,
Yeah,
spend
he
some time
seemed
with.
fun. Maybe have a couple drinks with him or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And you perform, quite a bit, and performances can be great. They can be, that was okay. They could be not very good. Recently, has there been a time in one of your recent gigs where you felt completely just in the zone? What was it about that made you feel that way? Anything come to mind?
Recently, I think probably the times that it's easiest for me to completely just get out of my head and just be deep in it is just in a more like groove kind of situation. I mean, it could be swing. I'm just thinking about some of the times where it's maybe like a organ trio situation. I can't think of one gig off the top of my head, but like on a shuffle or just some kind of medium swing and just comping, and I'm like really listening to the drums and the organ and just swinging and having a good time. And then, moments in my, when I'm improvising and stuff, I get to there, but I guess it's just more factors kind of swirling around in my head. So it's kind of hard to like lock it in for like longer periods of time as I'm improvising. But sometimes during comping, I feel like I kind of like really get in there, hit a groove.
No, that's great. I, you know, we all have that moment in our lives, and you've been in this game for, quite some time now. Do you remember when it was that you knew that I'm going to be a jazz guitarist? I'm going for it. This is it. Was there like a defining like moment you had, or was it, just something kind of like maybe I'll be a professional musician? What was your mindset for that?
Yeah, I would say it probably emerged somewhat gradually. Definitely, I would go out and see a lot of music live. When I was still in high school, my parents were cool and they would let me go and hang out and go check out a bunch of shows in Baltimore and in DC. So there was a piano player named Lafayette Gilchrist. I think that was like the first like kind of jazz-ish situation that I saw, and I remember seeing David Fathead Newman early on, and that kind of like got me really hooked. And listening to Coltrane, I think, was a big one as far as just my interest in the general realm of jazz. As far as being a professional musician, at that time, I wouldn't say that I was like practicing a lot. I wasn't really taking guitar itself that seriously. I was just really into music. Gradually over time, I think just because I was into it, I started playing some gigs when I was in high school, just through the school. And then maybe somebody would get stuck and they would have to call you because they couldn't find anybody else to come and play. Um, and so it kind of just went gradually from that. And then again, towards the end of high school, I think I decided I wanted to pursue it in college. But I still didn't really have that clear of an idea of like what a life trying to make a living playing music was, and that all kind of slowly just unfolded throughout college, and
Do you
graduating.
think that, like, if you were to look at your future self, do you think your old self would be proud of where you're at? Would he be surprised? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for where my mind was at throughout most of college, I think this is like already way past what I thought I was going to be doing. I thought I was probably going to be like teaching a lot of beginner guitar lessons, which I still don't mind doing or anything like that. But I thought I was going to be, just a music studio and then maybe play like one gig a week or two gigs a month, maybe like a jazz gig here or there, and probably like mostly cocktail hour kind of stuff. So this is already like, I'm already happy with the way that it turned out, especially compared to like where my mindset was at when I was in high school and college and things like that.
No, that's great. When I know what you're saying. Like, oh, you look at your future self, you're like, oh, am I just going to be, teaching some guitar lessons or something like that? And you've had the chance to do so much. I wanted to ask you, what you work so much playing this music, and we often like have sort of a internal soundtrack. I like to think of it, go, when we're not playing music. So is there any like specific melody or song that kind of like just you hear, pretty regularly?
Um, the one that actually I feel like, strangely enough, kind of keeps running my head is just like all these like Roy Haynes. It's interesting because he just passed.
Yeah,
Rhythms,
rest
especially
his soul,
one.
you know.
Yeah, the ones from there's this version of Up Against the Wall. It's like Coltrane live at the Showboat, and Roy's just playing all his funky comping patterns. And actually, last night we were listening to some Charlie Parker with like Roy from '51. So there's just all these like Roy Haynes little rhythmic phrases that I feel like I kind of like spin out in my head when I'm just like walking around in my day to day stuff. But melodies, it used to be like I don't have like the melodies as clearly anymore, but it used to be um, like a 26-2. I used to have that running a lot, and then like some Charlie Parker solos.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Roy Haynes. I've always thought about Roy Haynes, we're, almost the way his ride cymbal was, like it almost had like sort of a, I feel like a heaviness to it, Uh
Yeah,
that's just the way I think about it. Like when I hear his ride cymbal, like it's just like, you feel like your arms get heavy or something. Like, I don't know, but do you ever
yeah,
think
right.
about his ride cymbal pattern that way?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's like a serious dance going on, and just so much personality and so much of himself and like spontaneity. I mean, I don't really understand exactly what makes him different on a technical level, as I'm not like a drummer, but I know it's there's certain looseness in the way that he can just interact with like the soloist phrasing, and then just yeah, how much of himself he was kind of able to put into it. It has so much personality.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you mentioned 26-2, and I'm also kind of, curious, some songs they're timeless. I mean, all the standards are. Is there a standard for you that just never gets old, like your go-to favorite song that you like to play?
Um, Let me see.
Or it could be a couple that come to mind.
A couple that come to mind. They kind of go through phases. I just like play them to death and then let them phase out. But definitely, like many college jazz students, "You Step Out of a Dream" was a big one for a minute. Um, I've been playing "Beautiful Friendship" a lot, "Lover Man," but the ones from other periods of my life, yeah, it was like starting off definitely. Blanking on it, but maybe it'll come back to me. It
Are there
was
any
like
tunes you don't like to play that if like someone calls it a gig, you're like, oh shit, this one? Yeah.
um, tunes I don't like to play. Not really. I mean, sometimes I get a little bit frustrated with maybe people's calls based on like a situational awareness kind of thing. Like, look who's playing drums, look who's on bass, look who's on piano, what kind of song did we just play, look at the audience. So I'm okay with any song as long as it's called in an appropriate time and place. But sometimes, yeah, it'll be like a less experienced drummer, like a high school kid sitting in at the jam session. Somebody will call something really fast, or like that changes feels a lot, and that frustrates me.
No, I mean, you obviously want to be, you're only as good as the musicians you play with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I kind of feel that there's certain tempos that we just, when we feel like, oh, medium, like we might think about like 120 beats per minute or
Mm-hmm.
something like, or one, 210, I mean, two, sorry, like 210 for medium, whatever. These numbers. I'm just kind of curious, like, because you talked about the drums. Do you ever think about like these certain, like the different, you know, they're so close, these tempos, but everything that can change the groove to making you feel like you can get to where you want to get?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know that much about tempo markings. I was like practicing with like drum genius. I mean, I practice using the metronome too. Um, but I don't really get into like the intricacies of the crack tempos with the metronome probably as much as I should. As far as like choosing the slight differences in the tempos, I think yeah, it's probably has to do something with like reference songs, like recordings that you like a lot, and it's like a certain groove. I usually, if I'm trying to pick a tempo for the song, obviously like think about the melody, but sometimes I just have like Sam Jones kind of feeling on the bass, then I'm like kind of imagining like probably trying to think about different songs that I heard him play, and then like what the swing feels like at that tempo, or if it's not swing, a different groove. Just try to recall certain recordings, and then yeah, I have like ideas about general ideas about what kind of rhythmic language I can execute at different tempos and what that might do to the arc of the song.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, there's like there's like such a slight difference between like 220 and like 235 or something, and it's like
Mhm.
I've always felt that like being as a guitarist when you have to execute both hands at the same time, there are just some that we just are the way we hear rhythm and time just kind of gravitates towards do. But I was just kind of curious, if you had thought about that, and when you have to perform quite a bit. I'm kind of curious, before you go on stage, like anything you kind of tell yourself, like a mental ritual, or take a deep breath, or do you feel like, oh, I need to practice or warm up for 10 minutes? Do you have anything like that going on?
Um, yeah, I mean, I try to. I guess some things I've been thinking about. Yeah, definitely breathing is good. I try to remind myself to just like listen to everything that's happening while I'm playing. To enjoy it, I'm playing with a lot of people that I like would go and see when I was younger just for fun and because I like how they play. So I try to remind myself not to take it for granted and to actually like pay attention to what everybody's playing while I'm playing. And then other things, I like to like look in the audience if I get a chance and just like look at people's faces and just like be in the room and get a sense of like the feeling in the room. Just anything basically to try to counteract the feeling of like getting really tight and inside my head while I'm playing until that horrible feeling of like thinking too much while you're playing. So
Yeah, but
anything I can
you're such a you're a tremendous player, and seem very very relaxed and fluid. Do you ever still get nervous, like because you're saying like, oh, I don't want to be tight or
yeah,
something? Do you get
yeah, a
nervous
lot.
still?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not as bad as it was, but yeah, I still like if people that I look up to are listening, or even my peers and stuff. I can. I mean, I have more ways to tamp it down and just do my thing probably than I did at one time. But no, I think it's still there. Something that I try to stay vigilant about my mentality when I'm playing.
Yeah, I think there's,
My
whenever
hands.
like, it's good to have like some anxiety or some, anticipation. Because if you're just like, it probably won't go well.
Yeah, yeah, you can lose some urgency. But I mean, basically, I think it was just like I kind of ate it in front of like a lot of the people that I like. They've heard me struggle over different songs at jam sessions and on gigs and stuff like that. So luckily now it doesn't feel like as big of a deal. It kind of feels like all part of the process. You know, you're just doing the best that you can on any given day. And yeah.
No, no, that's great. Let me ask you, because you talked about looking in the audience.
Hmm.
The audience brings energy to the gig and a good audience, even if it's not even the number of people but just that they're quiet during solos or applaud after solos, it can change the
Hmm.
overall feel, I think. um has there, like, when I ask you like about an unforgettable reaction or connection you had to the audience in recent times, does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I had a few kind of powerful ones recently. Just played with Bernard Harper in Plainfield, like maybe like last week, and was like standing after the first song. That happened at
Standing
small.
ovation after the first tune.
Yeah, that
That's
happened. We
great.
played in New Brunswick, and people were really. I think that was after we had like a great vocalist, Joy Brown, with us, and she sang, and people got up. You know, after the first song, and also playing at Smalls a few times. The audiences, some really, really, really enthusiastic people, like sitting right up front. Um, and yeah, it's great. You know, like it definitely makes you play harder and kind of dig deep. You know, so
I also wanted to ask you too. This is kind of like a guitar nerd question.
mhm.
um the instrument you're playing on now versus what you used to play on. I think were you playing on, like, it was almost like a Benson type model at one point,
Yeah,
or am
yeah,
I
GB10 Ibanez.
GB10? Yeah, but now you're playing on a different instrument. Talk
Yeah,
about that for a sec.
yeah. I have a Gibson Super 5 that I've been playing, and yeah, I enjoy it. I don't know a ton about guitars. Basically, I like the Ibanez when I was playing the organ gigs and playing like louder, but I was playing so much like duo with singers or duo with bass and like restaurants and stuff. Sometimes the smaller box, I was having a hard time getting like a fulfilling sense of like the response from the instrument just because you're playing quieter. I love the Benson when you could like open it up.
Oh yeah, definitely. But like, it's interesting how those are two really good instruments, but even though you're playing the same repertoire, the environment can really make you think about those things because you want to play your optimal level.
Yeah, yeah. So when I got the bigger box, when I would play like those quieter gigs, it just felt like a little bit more fulfilling somehow. Um,
When you got the bigger one.
yeah, the Super Five,
Cool.
feels a little bit better for those things, and it's cool. It hasn't really been like feeding back or anything when I have to play louder. It feels like it still cuts, but it's a different thing.
Yeah, cool, cool. And one thing I like to ask the people on this series is about the misconception out there about being a jazz musician. Being a jazz musician is a mystery, not just to the uh, non-music world, but to other jazz musicians who are just starting school or coming up right out of school, or even who are further along in their careers. It's a mystery. What's the biggest misconception you think about being a jazz guitarist you wish more people understood?
Um, it's a good question. I'm not sure if I have a super clear answer for that.
Well, my
Some
goal is
of
to
the,
make someone say that was a good question.
yeah, some of the misconceptions. Um, I think I hear it both ways. I mean, I think some people think that it's harder than it is, and some people think that it's probably easier than it is. But I think maybe people discount the communal aspect of it, or like I think a lot of people think that like jam sessions and around New York, it's like really, really vibey. It seems to be like a word that people use, or like very negative. And there is plenty of negativity and stuff like that. People definitely talk smack and all that, put each other down. But I think for the most part, if you actually just go out and hang out and talk to people, like people are very nice and encouraging, and there's a lot of like things are way different now than they've ever been, and there are definitely. I mean, I wasn't alive in different eras, so I'm not really the person to say. But that talk just happens a lot. Like things are completely different. There's no way to make a living at this anymore.
Yeah,
There's
I just want to interject and get your thoughts on this because this is a good point. There's so many dichotomies of jazz.
mhm,
There's, like let me just like name guitar players for a second, like John Scofield versus Mark Whitfield or something, right?
mhm,
That's just guitar players. And you go into like genres, there's people who play like very, free over the form, and then there's people who play more, you know, traditional organ trio type stuff.
yeah,
And I've always thought like maybe it's just like that the reason there could be like that, like talking smack or whatever was because like some people might forget there's a whole bigger picture about, which is the cool part about jazz. There's a whole other big
yeah,
picture about these different, you know, subgenres or
mhm.
whatever. So maybe they just don't realize that or aren't as, open-minded. So, you kind of feel that might be the case or maybe something
Uh,
else.
yeah, definitely. I mean, it's different reasons coming from different sides. Obviously, some of it's going to be personal, some of it's going to be stylistic, or people just like insecure, so they feel like they need to put down another way to make them feel more secure in the direction that they're heading in because they're not as confident as they might want to be. Other times, people are a little bit shallow maybe about like the history, and so like it becomes like almost I don't know if this is the right term, but like culturally offensive. Like you're not really taking the music seriously. Other times people get a little bit too handcuffed, I think, by the way that they think that it's supposed to be instead of being like sincere with themselves. So like you're saying, there's a lot of dichotomies. My thing, as far as the misconception though, is that I think that some of that is just kind of blown out of proportion. I think it's more inside people's heads, and if they spent more time just being around and talking to people, they realize that the vast majority of people are just very laid back and cool and easy to get along with, and a lot of the big controversies, this versus that, are kind of blown out of proportion. So I guess yeah, to go back to the misconception, I would just encourage anybody to just go and try to be around it a lot and keep an open mind.
Yeah, well,
And
that's the thing. It's really all inside the musician's head about how they feel, you know.
yeah,
No one's a mind reader.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
At the end of the day, like you really don't know. But the person might feel that energy and then that could change their whole way they feel about that person and their peers or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. They start
But
to interpret everybody's actions and the way that people interact with them in a certain way because they already have
yeah.
something built up in their head. But I think it's just good to go out and check out a bunch of music and try to talk to the older people and talk to your peers, talk to some students that are learning how to play, and just try to be normal and cool with everybody. And that helps to whatever misconceptions people are building up or working on. That helps. That's probably the best like cure for like misconceptions is just making sure that you stay in it. You know.
Yeah. No, but this is a point I've been thinking about doing these interviews is that I think the whole, jazz will just become much more healthy for everybody if everybody opens up their eyes to the different dichotomies and the different, such a, it's the amount of different types of jazz there is. If people just open their eyes to that and
Yeah,
gave other people credit, like it would be so much healthier.
definitely, definitely.
Um, yeah, no, Charlie, this is great. Before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you, one more question, if that's okay.
Sure.
We talk about, the inner critic we might have, or being hard on ourselves and stuff. But sometimes growing as a musician means unlearning. What did you have to let go of, or is there anything that comes to mind that you had to let go of in order to move forward and get better?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, I'm that's still like half the battle now. I mean, yeah, I just had like a feeling like I'm not good enough like to be here. I just like lucked into it, or so like a basic imposter syndrome kind of stuff. Yeah, and I'm still
Imposter
dealing with
syndrome, imposter syndrome is a motherfucker.
yeah, definitely. So I'm still working through that stuff on a regular basis, but I think just slowly over time. I think once you are closer personally with some more like established people or like heavier people, and you see them growing and they're still practicing and they're still trying to get better, then it makes you feel like less separated. Just like we're all in this. This is a big family. We're all trying to get better. We have our little, like we were saying earlier, maybe there's a little small divides and stuff like that, but for the most part, it's not really that deep.
No, and
You
I
know,
really like how you use that word imposter syndrome. It's not something you don't hear too many jazz musicians really use that word. I've heard comedians talk about it before, but
yeah,
it's a very real thing for many people.
yeah,
And
definitely.
we're our own worst critics at the end of the day, and that's what,
Yeah, yeah.
we
So
get.
just trying to find that right balance so you can keep moving forward, but not this crippling self doubt that keeps you from seeking out different playing opportunities or just makes it harder to practice because you're in like a negative headspace. So yeah, just trying to find that right balance is
Yeah,
definitely.
no, that's great stuff. No, Charlie, thanks so much for talking with me today. And where can people find you on,
Mostly just Instagram. I still post on Facebook, and it's just Charlie Sigler music on Instagram.
beautiful. Well, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Abe.